Today's message comes from the Movemaker blog. The room was built for people. And it's all around this concept of when we built Movemaker Studio, which is, by the way, just a hop, skip, and a jump across the yard from my actual home. When we built it there, the plan was very simple. We wanted to create a space where the Fitness Studio of DeWitt could hold small group fitness classes. Something warm, something that was welcoming, a little more personal than your typical gym. And for the most part, that's exactly what it's become. We spent several years. My mom owned the business for nearly 30 years before handing it off to me. And we spent a lot of time in different community organizations and buildings, renting space. And we are so grateful for all of those locations. But as it goes, when you're a renter, sometimes you get bumped. Yeah, there's other stuff. There's other stuff going on. You're not always the top priority, and I get that. But to me, these people are a top priority, and their health and their wellness. And so I spoke with my husband. We had 2 pole barns on our property. And I thought, we'll DIY this. We'll reno one of the 2 buildings. No. And it actually worked out better for everybody because my husband, he's a big car guy, and he's a machinist. And so he's got all these big things. And he was utilizing both pole barns. I did not require a pole barn at the time. And I said, hey, there's 2 and I want 1. So all your stuff's got to go over here. And so he actually said, that's fine. I'm on board with that. But here's the trouble. Quite truly, the other barn we had wouldn't hold everything. And it was important for his work. And so we knocked one down, built a new one up. And then we moved everything from one barn, or from the 2 barns, we moved it all into one. And then we did the opposite when the new barn was built. We moved it all over to the other one so that we could do the reno on what is now the studio. And then appropriately split the things that belonged in the studio back into that space so that he could actually have his dream barn, which is awesome. But it was a very intentional project. It was not just a dream that we came up with on a weekend because we don't have enough to do. Because trust me, friends, that is not the case. But so for the most part, it has become what we intended. We run about 20 classes a week, usually a couple extra. And they're scattered through the mornings, afternoon, early evening, early Saturday, Sunday morning. And I gotta tell you, the room is absolutely alive during those times. We have the music pumping. And I've actually had this conversation with my neighbor because we're good neighbors, okay? So I had to ask, I'm like, hey, is this a thing? Like, is this way too loud? And bless my neighbors, they're the best. They said, we can hear it a little bit here and there, but as my kids call him, Mr. Craig. Mr. Craig just works out in the driveway. And I said, whoa. You need to have a membership to work out to these group fitness classes. This is not just an open air situation. Joking, of course. Anyway. So we have the music pumping. We have people laughing mid-lunge, which I'm sorry, but how rare is that to be working your body, doing something strenuous and actually smiling, not because you feel like you have to, but because you feel like you can and you want to. But like most physical spaces, the schedule for the studio, it leaves some big pockets of quiet. And that's not unusual. It's not something I wasn't prepared for. But Saturday and Sunday afternoons, or most evenings after, say, 7 or 7:30. And occasionally, there's just a random lull. There's spring break or whatever. And at first, I really did not think much about those gaps. I was not concerned about it. Empty time just meant that I had time to go in and clean or plan or rework my playlist or, maybe just sit on the floor for a minute and stare at everything and either appreciate it all or, think about what I could repaint or, take note of the dingers that I almost entirely by myself put into all of these fresh new walls. But here's the thing. Recently, something interesting started happening. I have had several members of the studio say, "Oh my gosh, Lindsay, this would be such a perfect spot for a baby shower or, a graduation open house." And I'm like, "Girlfriend, you think I didn't think about that?" Like, oh, okay, that's half the reason. That's the other half of the reason that we went into this project, is so that I had a place that was not the inside of my own home to host my son and daughter's graduation open houses. They're 5 and 7, by the way, so we have a minute. But my brother is part of this group. They're called Bare Bones Improv Comedy. And twice now, they've needed a somewhat last minute kind of rehearsal space. Their usual meeting place is at Riverwalk Theater, which we love, but it wasn't available for one reason or another. And so, no weights, no playlists, no squats, just a group of adults and whatever their amazing imaginations could dream up. I mean, if you are not an improv person or if you haven't experienced it, you have to, because the things that come seemingly out of thin air, but you know what, you guys, it's not out of thin air. It's out of somebody's brain. It's out of somebody's imagination. It's out of, this beautiful sense of creativity. It's amazing. And so, there's adults out there pretending to be, say, like squirrels that are, I don't know, maybe negotiating a big business merger. It could be anything. It could be pirates out there and they are arguing about the directional accuracy of their treasure maps. Either way, it doesn't matter. There's just a lot of laughter. And I'm not talking polite chuckles, like, you know what I'm talking about, like the nice, I'm talking like laughter that makes people bend over and slap their knee and completely forget about what they were supposed to say next. That is beautiful. And okay, here's my confession. At first, I will admit, I felt pretty protective of this space that was built with a really specific purpose in mind. It was for fitness classes. It was for movement. It was for wellness. It was not for improv. It was not for comedy. It was not for people pretending to be dinosaurs applying for desk jobs. Sorry, T-Rex. But then this group arrived, and with full honesty, you guys, within minutes, the room was full. And as soon as I started watching everything kind of unfold, I realized that this room, this space, it wasn't built for fitness. It was built for people, for humans. So even though no one was doing burpees, even though there wasn't, a bunch of people with resistance bands around their legs, none of that in sight, the room was still doing its job. And people were moving. People were connecting. People were leaving a little bit lighter than when they walked in, which I always say to my classes. I always ask them to do that self-check of, hey, when you leave here, you should feel better than when you arrived. And if you don't, something's off, and let's talk about it. Let's figure out what it is so that we can get you headed in the right direction. And honestly, the goal of wellness, I believe, whether we're talking about fitness or comedy or whatever, is that it's that people leave feeling lighter, or they leave feeling more like their true selves. And this had me in my brain revisiting a conversation I had just this same week with one of our members at the studio, who actually, she's had to pause on coming to classes for a little bit because she's got some really frustrating health stuff going on. And this woman is amazing. She's been with us for years. I mean, decades, not exaggerating. This woman has been working out with us for decades, and she's hilarious. She is the one who, in the middle of a very difficult track, she's cursing out loud and making everybody else laugh and just like lightening the mood and keeping it what it should be. And but when someone is used to showing up like that, when someone's used to showing up regularly, stepping away, even for a little bit, and for her, this could be a while. It could be forever. We don't know. She's got a lot going on. But when people have to step away, that can start to feel like not just stepping away from a workout, but stepping away from a community altogether. But wellness, my friends, has never been limited to the 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour that you spend engaged in an actual workout. That's not what it's about, at least not here. And so she and I, we brainstormed some other ways that she could keep some of those same ingredients that you get out of group fitness in her life while her body heals. How can we check some of those same boxes? And we talked about, great, having coffee with a friend, attending a creative class, changing your role. Maybe you could be the check-in person or the accountability partner. Maybe you could volunteer. Maybe you could join a book club. Or you know what? Maybe join an improv group. I don't know. Different activities, same human needs being met. Because when you zoom out far enough, the things that we are really chasing through exercise, I believe, are not always the workouts themselves. It's the laughter. It's the connection. It's the sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. It is the feeling that you showed up somewhere and someone noticed. Or the opposite. Maybe you missed class and someone noticed. And I see this all the time with our members, and it's such a beautiful thing, and it gives me such joy and such peace, because even though I'm kind of steering the ship, all of these people, everybody that's part of this community is checking in on one another and taking accountability to make sure that everyone is seen and heard and understood and getting what they need out of this experience. And I'm just so grateful. It's such an amazing thing to have such a beautiful group of well-intended, kind humans all in one space. And sometimes what brings us together, sometimes it's planks, sometimes it's stretching on the floor with our friends, but sometimes it's a bunch of adults pretending to be astronauts in a room that, let's be real friends, used to be a pole barn. Okay? So the studio, it may have started as a place for fitness classes, and it is still serving that purpose. But it turns out it's really, at its core, a container for people to show up as themselves And if that happens through exercise or improv or workshops or conversations or maybe something we haven't even thought of yet, then the space is doing exactly what it was meant to do. So my friends, today I say to you, move like it matters, even if that movement looks a little different than maybe what you had expected in your mind. Maybe it looks like dancing or stretching or a group of adults pretending to be squirrels negotiating a merger. It's all fantastic.